Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, things are heating up again over the potential sale of an iconic Pittsburgh company. And inside sources say President Biden is planning to block it. City councils signed off on a couple $1 million to assist renters facing eviction. The former mayor's Twitter account got hacked, and we are riffing hard on a certain someone's MilkShake factory order. It's September 6th, the Friday News Roundup. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with CityCast's Mallory Falk and Sophia Lowe. Good morning, Yins.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to kick things off with something silly, something fun. Recently, former Mayor Bill Peduto's Twitter, I guess X, his account got hacked.
Did someone post something embarrassing? Leak Pittsburgh secrets?
Oh, that would be way more fun. No, it's one of those where like they're showing tech things, like tech gadgets or whatever, and they want you to click on their stuff. His account is private now, but it just made me harken back to the old days in Pittsburgh when you would get like, you know, his policy positions, or he'd be clapping back to somebody, talking to his haters on Twitter from Cappy's Bar in Shadyside at like 1 a.m. as the sitting mayor.
That makes a lot of sense. I would also be angry late at night after some drinks.
What's funny is I was not living in Pittsburgh at the time, and I was not following Peduto on Twitter at the time. And yet somehow, all the way in West Texas, I still somehow understood that this man was known for sending late night tweets from Cappy's.
Yeah. It was a simpler time on the internet. Oversimplification, of course, but like just to zoom out a little bit, it seems like Gainey's maybe been a little more insular, focus on what's here, what needs fixed, bringing people to the table here in town. But Peduto was like a celebrity mayor. He got Pittsburgh so much attention. He was really gregarious. He popped off when people said stuff about us, like good and bad. And he inserted Pittsburgh into conversations that we sometimes did not really belong in.
Oh, no.
Pittsburghers love to do that, though.
They really do. But the thing that sticks with me, though, is that he was just so easy to reach on this platform. Like if you wanted to gripe at him or just ask a question, you tweet at him. And often enough, he would respond to you. And often enough, it would be late at night while he was listening to somebody crooning karaoke behind him at the bar. It was just so funny, and I think about that all the time.
Well, Twitter's dead now, so it is a different time.
Honestly, I mean, I actually fully expected to go to his Twitter today and see that he hasn't used it in like months or years, like everyone else I know. But nope, gobs of tweets all this week. He is still a prolific user, so I hope old Bill gets his Twitter account back soon.
Well, speaking of local intrigue, although this is actually really an international story too, The big news this week has been all about U.S. Steel. We are recording this on Thursday afternoon, so there might be new details by the time you hear this, but as of this recording at least, President Biden is reportedly getting ready to block Nippon Steel's acquisition of U.S. Steel. There have been rallies by U.S. steelworkers downtown. The company itself is threatening to leave the city if the sale doesn't go through, and the promised investment money from Nippon has doubled, so things are just suddenly moving extremely fast.
Yeah, it's getting wild out here.
Reminder, Nippon is a Japanese company. They are hoping to purchase U.S. Steel for a total sale price of about $15 billion.
Yeah, and just a quick refresher for anybody who maybe hasn't been following this super closely. Nippon announced this plan to buy U.S. Steel last December, so that's kind of when all of this kicked off.
Yeah, the White House almost immediately jumped in to say, hold your horses. We're going to review all of this before you can proceed. That process has been moving through the Committee on Foreign Investment and has been going on for months now.
Yeah, and the union, the United Steelworkers, have opposed this sale, and so have lawmakers, Biden and Trump right away, and most recently, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, Biden said it's vital that U.S. Steel remain American-made. Back in January, Trump said he would block it instantaneously, the deal, if he were in office. And then Harris just announced her opposition in Pittsburgh this week on Labor Day.
Yeah, she said U.S. Steel is a historic American company, and same thing as Biden. She said it should remain American-owned and American-operated. She also said she will, quote, always have the back of American steelworkers.
But then while this is happening, things have kept moving forward on the business side. So shareholders from U.S. Steel, they approved the deal in April. Around that same time, the Justice Department opened an antitrust investigation. So things kind of moving on these two parallel tracks. The two companies got some regulatory approvals in May, but also postponed the closing date because of the investigations. They started this media blitz over the summer. More on that in a minute.
Yeah.
And then the last we heard, they're shooting to close now in November, same time as the election.
Exactly. And just to speak to Harris's statement to, supporting steelworkers, supporting the union, I think that is one reason you are seeing such bipartisan opposition to this deal. It's an election year. Pennsylvania is a swing state. Both candidates are, of course, vying for union support. So I think it just makes political sense for them to side with the United Steelworkers, who have been raising real concerns about layoffs and plant closures and just what this deal is going to mean for so many workers and for the city.
Right. And Nippon has promised that there won't be layoffs or closures. They say that that's built into the contract.
But we will have more on that after the break. So this U.S. Steel, Nippon Steel situation, so many promises.
Right. But union members say they're worried about all of these potential loopholes.
Exactly. So earlier this summer, Washington Post reporters got their hands on a draft of the agreement. And it said that Nippon could basically abandon its promise in the case of, quote, an unanticipated or significant downturn in business conditions, end quote.
Which feels so ambiguous.
Yeah, I'd be scared to read that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's some vague clause that allows you to back out of some kind of promise, there's some reason for concern. And, the president of the United Steelworkers said as much. He said if a promise is conditional, then it's basically just an empty promise.
But meanwhile, Nippon has doubled its original financial commitment to this whole sale. They had promised $1.4 billion to upgrade the infrastructure in the Mon Valley and elsewhere, which, that has huge implications for the company and its environmental footprint. Like one of the U.S. steel plants, just one, Clearton Coke Works, is considered one of the worst polluters in the nation by some metrics. And U.S. Steel has said so many times that they do not have the funding to clean it up. Nippon was already promising to help with all that, and now they have almost doubled that amount of money. So now it's $2.7 billion combined.
Whoa, more big billions.
I know. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around all these billion-dollar numbers.
Yeah, I mean, in those billions, those are separate from the actual sale price. But, up top, we hinted at the media blitz. These companies have been spending so much money in our market to promote this sale. And for transparency's sake, that includes on our podcast.
Right. And besides on our show, I've also seen Nippon on the TV stations, YouTube commercials, radio commercials, the CEO of U.S. Steel and the vice chairman of Nippon, both really making themselves available to try and promote all of this in Pittsburgh.
I mean, some of it is earned media, right? Like news organizations like ours reporting on it. But it's also a lot of paid advertisement, too. So they paid to drop their podcast in our feed. That was the Steel Stories thing you may have seen. But we meant what we said. If you want to hear how these two people at the top of their respective companies are talking about the sale internally amongst themselves, I do think it's actually worth listening to. Not because you agree with them or their positions or what they're saying. Maybe you do, but because they're the guys at the top. And I think it is always worth listening to people in positions of power when they talk about stuff of this magnitude that's going to affect so many of us. For example, the Nippon guy, Takahiro Mori, he promised repeatedly to invest in the facilities here, that there would not be layoffs, and that they would keep their U.S. headquarters in Pittsburgh. They even talk about what happens beyond 2026, which I think is the initial phase of the acquisition. To me, those are not small things to put on the record. I know it's not a contract, it's a podcast, so it's not like it's in ink, but still it's something.
Yeah, at the top we mentioned big promises. These are big promises. But if you missed that extra podcast drop in our feed, TLDR, the U.S. Steel president and CEO, David Burritt, says that this is going to be the best deal for stockholders in U.S. Steel and that Nippon has tech that we just don't have in Pittsburgh. And, another thing is Nippon has deeper pockets to upgrade us and bring that tech to us. Remember, billions of dollars going into this deal. And Burritt argues it's going to strengthen national security. And Mori says Nippon was attracted to U.S. Steel's competitiveness, its reputation in the American market. Obviously, U.S. Steel's been around for a really long time. And, other things that Nippon really liked were the workforce and more. Anyway, he says Nippon's been working in the U.S. for 40 years now, so this isn't something completely brand new.
Yeah, that strengthening national security piece, I think they mean because Japan is historically an ally of the U.S. But they also talk about people possibly confusing Japan with China, like just in terms of those national security concerns and like competition. I am probably naive, but that would have never occurred to me.
Same here.
I also think it's worth noting that U.S. Steel did have another offer from Cleveland-Cliffs, which is based in Cleveland, like the name suggests. Yep. They offered $7.3 billion a few months before Nippon came in with their bid, which was obviously for a lot more money. But U.S. Steel rejected the bid from Cleveland-Cliffs. They said it was unreasonable, and they were being pressured to accept it without enough time to do their due diligence.
The Steelworkers Union did support that offer, though, and they still do.
Yeah, I took a stroll through the Cleveland-Cliffs website. So back in May, they posted this sort of scathing clapback to U.S. Steel.
Drama.
Saying that the deal was not unreasonable and there was no misinformation. If there was claims of misinformation, I missed that completely. But anyway, they uploaded their whole offer package and a PowerPoint.
Oh, wow.
The whole PowerPoint to their website as sort of a like, here, go look for yourself, people, which included their notes about this deal requiring union support and that trying to sell to any foreign company would likely come under review and ultimately get blocked. Although my favorite part of this Cleveland-Cliffs thing is that every time they mention their, quote, final offer, they also include in parentheses right after it, now expired. As if like, you could have had us, but we're not interested anymore.
They're being so snarky about this. I would also be that petty.
I'm sure there's a legal reason, but it was so funny.
Oh, I thought it was just for fun. But yes,
I think it's
the law
both.
makes more sense.
Well, anyway, as predicted, it seems like Biden is planning to block the deal over these, quote, national security concerns. The Committee on Foreign Investment still has to give Biden a final report and recommendation. And I guess legally he can't block the sale for security reasons until they do that, which I've seen reporting that says it could happen this month or later. But inside sources told the Post that the committee does have these concerns about the sale being a security risk. None of the reporting I'm seeing spells out what the concerns actually are. And, Megan, you mentioned national policy experts have been mentioning this. Japan is a longtime U.S. ally. So I don't know, maybe if and when Biden actually blocks the sale, we'll learn more about those concerns. But Reuters reported that the Biden administration sent Nippon a letter over the weekend saying the deal would damage American steel production and change how they sell their products overseas, implying not in a good way.
Well, I can't imagine U.S. Steel is happy about all of this because they have been promoting this so much.
No, for sure. Earlier on Wednesday, before the news broke about Biden moving to maybe potentially officially block the sale, U.S. Steel put out a press release saying that if it doesn't go through, thousands of jobs will be at risk and they may have to move their headquarters out of Pittsburgh. May have to. They might have to.
Yeah. I mean, the exact language was if the deal doesn't go through, quote, U.S. Steel will largely pivot away from its blast furnace facilities, putting thousands of good-paying union jobs at risk. And it also said that, quote, the lack of a deal with Nippon Steel raises serious questions about U.S. Steel remaining headquartered in Pittsburgh. The departure of U.S. Steel, a company that has been making steel in the Mon Valley since 1901, would deprive the Pittsburgh area of jobs, tax revenue, and community-based contributions, end quote.
That is a big threat. Also, I was just very curious when they released this, like where they would potentially go if they were to leave Pittsburgh. But guess we'll see if that happens. But I'm also guessing they coordinated this statement with the big rally that happened downtown.
Yeah, I mean, the press release was actually announcing the rally, Sophia. So the president and CEO of U.S. Steel, again, David Burritt, said the goal of the rally was to get politicians and other key decision makers to, quote, recognize the benefits of the deal as well as the unavoidable consequences if the deal fails, end quote.
I mean, the one thing that I thought was interesting about his letter, is that he also points out that the Committee on Foreign Investment is also supposed to be not political, which feels like an interesting move then for an outgoing president who is campaigning so fiercely on labor, but also in tandem with the Democratic nominee to be making this incredibly political this close to an election. And without the benefit of that review being out yet. Like if the review says there's concerns, then it makes a little more sense, but the review's not there yet for him to like say I'm doing this because, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is also tricky timing because if the goal is for the deal to go through in November, it is happening right in the midst of this transfer of power. And so, I mean, I agree that I think there are valid concerns about all of this being extremely political, but I'm also not sure kind of what timeline for any of this would make the most sense.
Yeah, no, you're right. The rally downtown that happened earlier this week, the Trib estimates there were about 400 people there, all wearing hard hats and orange jackets and Union or U.S. Steel insignia. The Trib said that some of them had been bussed in from the Mon Valley Works, and they were all holding up signs. There were pictures everywhere, but like nearly 3 billion reasons to say yes. It makes you wonder if there's a split right now between employees or like if there's different factions who want different things within the union.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone listening is connected to U.S. Steel and wants to share any insight about the kinds of conversations that are happening right now among workers, please reach out. You can send us an email at pittsburgh@citycast.fm or leave us a voicemail at 412-212-8893. Obviously, this is a very big story with big implications for our region that we will be continuing to follow. So we would love to hear from the people who are going to be most directly affected by this deal, whether it goes through or not.
Yeah, and I mean, that question, like whether it goes through, seems like a huge question mark right now. On Wednesday, after these reports dropped about Biden planning to block the deal, shares of U.S. Steel stock plummeted like 20%, according to the New York Times. I guess it's unclear exactly when Biden might officially make some decision. So, who knows? Maybe by the time you hear this Friday morning, something will have changed. But I don't know. It's all happening so fast.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also unclear if Biden could even have the final word on this. It could end up in litigation if he does block the deal. So we're just going to have to see how this all plays out. I am sure we'll be checking back in about it very soon.
So next up, we have some good news for renters. Earlier this week, City Council decided to expand a program that gives low-income renters free help if they're facing eviction.
Yeah, I saw this in the Trib this week where one city councilor said about half the people living in the city right now are renters. That is an incredible figure to me.
I would have guessed higher. Maybe it's because I'm a renter and I'm self-centered.
Fair. You're not self-centered, though. That part's not fair.
Well, how much money are we talking about here? Because that's probably a lot of people who might want to take advantage of these services.
Yeah, it's a pretty big chunk of money, up to $2 million. So this money's coming from the city's Stop the Violence Fund. Council members are saying that eviction is a root cause of violence, so this move makes sense. And this program's going to be available to residents all over the city, just as long as your income's at or below 80% of the area's median income. And one outlet, crunched the numbers, and this comes out to about $81,000 for a family of 4 people.
That is not much money for, if you're imagining, a dual income situation.
And WESA explained that, all this money can go towards things like legal representation in court, mediation services, or just, getting connected to other rental assistance programs.
Yeah, I mean, the lawyer piece is really interesting to me, too. It's called, I'd never heard of this, Lawyer of the Day, and make sure an attorney is available in different district courts to help people going through eviction proceedings on their own. If you don't have someone, there is this attorney, I guess, sitting there waiting for you to help out. That seems incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that knocks out so many barriers to having representation and guidance. But, this whole thing was a pilot first, so I'm curious if they tweaked anything or just learned anything from kind of the first round of this.
Yeah, the Trib reported that since the pilot version of this got started in 2022, more than 1,600 households have used the service.
Wow.
And about 3/4 of the time, people were not evicted.
I wonder what that's compared to before, though. It's only a success if that's fewer people than were being evicted before,
Right. Yeah. The Trib didn't give like an exact statistic for the amount of people who were evicted before, but the program coordinator told them that it's a 5-fold improvement compared to eviction rates before this pilot existed.
That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, definitely an improvement. Anyway, most of city council was in favor of making this money available. Obviously, housing advocates were really supportive. But one possible slowdown ahead, WESA reported that the president of the Landlord Service Bureau, Craig Kostelak, was against this expansion, and he might be putting in a legal challenge to fight the decision.
I feel like that's counterintuitive. What's his take?
WASA quoted him saying, "Why are we taking taxpayers' money for victims of violent crime and giving it to a lawyer when Neighborhood Legal is doing this for free already?" So Neighborhood Legal Services also is around to help folks connect with free lawyers for civil cases, and they have a whole housing department. But I mean, sounds like more lawyers is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I take his point, but I also think, like, I'm guessing you have to seek out neighborhood legal services. Like, they are not standing in the hallway waiting for someone to appear. Like, to me, that's maybe the difference. I'm definitely reading between the lines here, but it seems like this might be a more proactive way to meet people where they are in the moment that they need help.
Right. And since this money doesn't necessarily have to go to a lawyer, I just imagine there's more avenues for people to also get help. We'll keep an eye on whether this funding does hit any roadblocks, and if there are any major updates, we'll share more on the pod or in the Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. So make sure you hit subscribe on that.
And then there are just some other services that are worth looking into if you're having issues with your landlord. So, Sophia, you mentioned Neighborhood Legal Services. Their website has lots of really helpful links about tenants' rights, repairs, what you're entitled to, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you can always get in contact with their lawyers.
Yeah, and then if you want to work outside of the court system, Just Mediation, PGH, can step in as a third-party mediator and try to work out a solution between you and your landlord.
Yeah. We actually talked to both groups for past podcasts. We'll link those in the show notes if you want to listen. One of them included a ton of great tips for A, finding a solid rental unit, but also B, vetting your landlord and the contract.
Very important.
So hopefully you do not end up in a situation where you need to use any of the services like this.
Yes, if you're renting in the city of Pittsburgh, which is a lot of Pittsburghers, I would highly recommend taking a listen. Before we go, what is everyone going to be thinking about this weekend? Mine is actually something that I want to read.
So I'm thinking about a couple different events for tonight. So
it's so proactive, Sophia.
You know I'm always on the lookout for something to do. It's First Fridays along Penn Avenue, and there's a fill-a-bag fundraiser at East End Community Thrift. So you can fill a whole bag of clothes for just like $5, $10. The thrift shop's been a project of the Thomas Merton Center. They're a local social justice nonprofit, and they actually recently announced that they're closing down after more than 50 years. Yeah. But the thrift store is really going to try to stay open, and they're using this as an opportunity to raise money so they can continue their operations.
So you go in and you fill up a bag of clothes you want to take home for $5 or $10?
Yeah, and they have a lot of clothes. Like, I've been to this before. They had to get their floor fixed, so they did a similar fundraiser. There's also like drinks and a DJ, so a lot going on in just one shop.
God, $5 or $10 is nothing to take home a bag of clothing.
Yeah.
And then, once you've got all your clothes, check out all the other stuff that pops up on First Fridays. Jellyfish is celebrating its 7th birthday at Spirit in Lawrenceville. They're a queer disco party. I've also been super great.
I love them.
And they are asking everyone to bring cookies for their birthday cookie table.
That's great.
That is so perfect for you, Sophia, because if I know anything about you, I know you always have some cookies in the oven. So mine, for a while now, I have been obsessed with this duplex in Highland Park on North Highland. I always pass it when I'm walking my dog. It seems like the neighbors on either side of this duplex are in a battle to one-up each other's political lawn signs. If you have seen this house before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They have very different views. So one side of the lawn has pride flags, Kamala Harris signs, a row, row, row your vote sign, that kind of stuff. And then the other side has a bunch of Trump signs and flags. There's cardboard cutouts of Trump and Melania. that kind of vibe.
Wild to think about that contrast.
Yes. The last time I passed, I think there was also a little cutout of RFK Jr. I have always wondered what the story is there, like who put the first sign up, if the neighbors are able to speak and be civil with each other. And the Trib actually just did an article about them. So that is definitely going to be my weekend reading. I cannot wait to dive in and learn about this house divided and get the inside story.
Sounds like a good read. Megan, what about you?
I mean, mine's along the same lines, but it's just like this whole ping pong match situation of our whole political scene here in Pittsburgh right now. There's just been a ton of reporting lately about how much is being spent here on political ads. Like I was digging into numbers just because this is how I spend my free time. Ad Impact, it's a company that tracks this stuff. They show a combined $350 million spent in Pennsylvania alone. And the Pittsburgh market, of course, is the second highest, just behind Philly. So about $83 million in the Pittsburgh market alone. That does not include ad buys that are coming, that are, locked in from now till November. But the thing that struck me is we are the only state, aside from Georgia, so it's us in Georgia, where Republicans and Democrats are matching each other dollar for dollar. So Democrats are outspending in other swing states by a lot. But Republicans here in Pennsylvania and in Georgia, they're keeping up. And the reason why the candidates are here every few minutes, including Kamala Harris, who's here now through Tuesday, preparing for the debate. Let's see, Tim Walz and his daughter were here. Doug Emhoff was here. Trump was here. He filmed a town hall with Fox News over in Harrisburg this week. They're here constantly, and it's all because of this whole electoral college nonsense.
Can we talk about Walz going to the MilkShake factory, though? Because I don't think he got the right order.
Of course, that's what you'd latch on to, Sophia.
I mean, okay, I think you're wrong. I really like mint cookies and cream. That was my pregnancy craving, and I stand by his choice.
I don't know. I think if you're going to pay MilkShake factory prices, you got to go all in on a milkshake with more stuff. I like the cookie jar. It has chocolate chip cookie dough, crushed up cookies and cream, peanut butter cookie crumbles. It's all topped with whipped cream and a chocolate dip, like little cookies and cream guy.
All right, Sophia, if the MilkShake Factory ever sponsors CityCast, I'm going to vote for you to do the ad. But I still disagree with you because the simple shakes, first of all, they cost less. And we know a Minnesota boy loves a deal, but so do Pittsburghers. And they are also delicious. Like I get a plain chocolate shake and I get them to just mix up a whole banana into it.
What?
It's great. It's simple and it is exactly what I want.
Bananas are for smoothies. Milkshakes are for more ice cream.
There is nothing behind that MilkShake Factory counter that is better than my chocolate and banana milkshake. And it costs less than a Jake Shake.
Okay, well, to bring this all full circle, neither of you were here at the time, but the night of the midterm elections in 2022, when our team pulled an all-nighter in the studio so we could bring everyone election results the next morning, we actually went to the MilkShake Factory while we were waiting for results to roll in.
Nice.
So I think we got to make this a tradition and get some deluxe milkshakes this November while we're waiting to find out who our next president is. But Sophia, for the record, I am with you. If you're going to bother going to MilkShake Factory, you should get something elaborate. Like, I can blend up some chocolate ice cream and a banana in my own home.
I won't. I won't do it at home. And I love to have someone else do it for me out in public.
Fair.
Anyway, this whole election circus goes back, like I said, to the Electoral College, which analysts are saying may come down entirely to us. Chris Hayes of MSNBC said, quote, for both campaigns right now, the Keystone State looks like a true keystone to victory, end quote.
No.
NPR's political podcast this week said, quote, PA is shaping up to be the state to watch, end quote. Anyway, I hate everything about all of this, but I also cannot look away.
Can we ban Keystone jokes? Stop the Keystone jokes, please.
Yes, that we agree on. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji. Mallory Falk is our executive producer. Sophia Lowe produced the show. Francesca DeBecco and Natalia Aldana wrote our newsletter. And I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Seltzer burp did not come.